My cousin, Chloe, has always been the kind of person who could set a house on fire and convince everyone she was just trying to keep them warm. Growing up, she was the family's golden miracle. She was the one with the perfect curls, the light eyes, and the dimples that made our grandmother reach for her checkbook. I, on the other hand, was the reliable one. I was the one who tutored her through algebra so she wouldn't fail out of high school, only to have her tell her friends I was a boring nerd behind my back. My parents and my aunt constantly compared us. If Chloe got a C, they celebrated her effort. If I got an A, they asked why it wasn't an A+. I spent my entire childhood being useful but never loved. That's the thing about being the unpretty cousin. You learn early on that if you aren't providing a service, you're invisible. So, I channeled every ounce of my resentment into my career. By the time I was 26, I was making six figures in a high-pressure corporate firm, living in a house I bought with my own sweat, and cycling through designer purses that Chloe would have killed for. We hadn't spoken since our family's last Christmas dinner, where she made a comment about my corporate drone lifestyle while she was on her third soul-searching gap year funded by her parents. I didn't care. I had my peace, my home, and a long-distance boyfriend, Marcus, who actually saw me for who I was. That peace shattered on a Tuesday morning. I was working from my home office when my doorbell rang with a frantic, rhythmic pounding. I opened it to find Chloe standing there, looking like she'd just survived a tornado. Her hair was a mess, her makeup was smeared, and she was clutching her two kids, Liam, 8, and Noah, 5, by their shoulders. "Emma, thank God you're home," she gasped, her voice trembling. "I have to go. It's an emergency. I think it's my appendix. The pain is unbearable. I can barely drive." I looked at her, then at the boys. They looked terrified, clutching small backpacks that looked like they'd been packed in 30 seconds. "Chloe, call an ambulance," I said, my pushover instincts warring with the spine I'd been trying to grow in therapy. "I can't just take the kids. I have a presentation in an hour." "Please," she shrieked, and for a second she looked so desperate I almost believed her. "The ER is only 10 minutes from here. I'll be back as soon as they clear me. They're good kids. Emma, please, don't let them see me collapse." Before I could say another word, she practically shoved the boys through my front door, turned on her heel, and sprinted back to her car. She didn't look like a woman with a bursting appendix, she looked like a woman running a marathon. She peeled out of my driveway, leaving me standing in my foyer with two silent, wide-eyed children. I told myself it was fine. It was an emergency. Even Chloe wouldn't lie about something like that. I sat the boys down in the living room with some snacks and a movie, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. 2 hours passed. Then 4. I called Chloe's phone. It went straight to voicemail. I called her mother, my Aunt Sarah, but she didn't answer either. By 5 p.m., I was starting to panic. I called the local hospital's ER, thinking I'd find her in recovery. "I'm looking for a Chloe Miller," I told the receptionist. "She should have been admitted this morning for an appendectomy." There was a long pause on the other end. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't have anyone by that name registered today. In fact, we haven't had an appendectomy patient since Sunday." My blood went cold. I hung up and felt a wave of nausea hit me. I walked over to the boys' backpacks, which were sitting by the door. I unzipped Liam's bag, expecting to find a change of clothes for a sleepover. Instead, I found 7 sets of outfits, 2 bottles of sunscreen, and a pair of swimming goggles. At the bottom of the bag was a printed itinerary that had fallen out of a side pocket. It wasn't a hospital bill. It was a confirmation for a 7-day tropical cruise departing from the port of Miami at 4 p.m. that afternoon. She wasn't in the ER. She was currently boarding a ship with a sugar daddy she'd been bragging about on her private Instagram story, which I was blocked from seeing. She hadn't asked me to babysit. She had abandoned her children on my doorstep so she could go drink margaritas in the Caribbean. The tension in my chest snapped. I wasn't the useful cousin anymore. I was a victim of a felony. I looked at Liam, who was watching me with an expression that was far too old for an 8-year-old. "Is Mommy okay?" he asked quietly. "Mommy is fine, Liam," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I had never felt before, but she made a big mistake. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Chloe again. I dialed the number for Child Protective Services. I was done being the pushover. I was going to make sure she finally faced a consequence she couldn't dimple her way out of. But as I waited for the operator to pick up, a dark shadow crossed my front window. A massive black Suburban pulled into my driveway. A car I didn't recognize. A man stepped out. He was at least 6'5", pushing 300 pounds, with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He didn't knock. He slapped the door with the palm of his hand. A sound like a sandbag hitting the floor. "Emma!" a voice shouted from outside. It wasn't Chloe. It was a man with a thick, menacing accent. "Open the door. We need to talk about the kids." My heart hammered against my ribs. Chloe hadn't just left the kids, she had left a sentry to make sure I kept my mouth shut. The pounding on the door wasn't just a knock, it was a rhythmic vibration that rattled the designer frames on my hallway walls. I stood there, frozen, my phone still clutched in my hand with the CPS number blinking on the screen. Liam and Noah had stopped watching their movie. They were huddled together on the sofa, their faces pale, looking at the door like it was a monster trying to get inside. "Emma, I know you're in there," the man roared again. His voice was like gravel grinding together. "Chloe told me you'd be difficult. Open up, or I'll find another way in." I took a deep breath, trying to summon that stronger spine my therapist talked about. I leaned into the door, but I didn't unlock it. I kept the security chain engaged. "Who are you?" "I'm calling the police." "I'm Victor," he spat back. "I'm the one who makes sure Chloe's business stays private. She told me you were thinking of making some calls. That would be a very expensive mistake for you, Emma." I realized then that Chloe hadn't just run away, she had orchestrated a siege. She knew me. She knew I was quiet and reserved and that people often saw me as a pushover. She expected me to crumble the moment things got physical. "She abandoned her kids, Victor," I yelled through the wood. "She lied about the ER. She's on a cruise." "She's on a business trip," Victor corrected me, his tone shifting to a terrifyingly calm level. "And you're going to be a good cousin and watch her boys for the next week. If you don't, well, Chloe has a lot of stories about you, Emma. Stories about your mental instability and how you shouldn't be working that high-flying job of yours." My stomach dropped. This was the blackmail. Chloe knew that my career was the only thing I truly identified with. It was the one thing I had that she couldn't touch. She was threatening to burn down the life I had built from the dirt. I stepped back from the door, my mind racing. I couldn't let this man inside with the boys, but I couldn't let him stay on my porch either. I looked at the kids. Noah, the 5-year-old, had started to cry silently, tears dripping onto his new Nintendo Switch. A gift I'd planned to give them later, but had grabbed from my office to distract them. "Go to the guest room," I whispered to them. "Lock the door and don't come out until I say it's okay. Play your games. Wear your headphones." They didn't argue. They scurried up the stairs like two little mice. Once I heard the click of the upstairs lock, I turned back to the door. I wasn't going to open it, but I wasn't going to hide either. I pulled up my phone and started recording. "Victor," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I'm recording this. If you touch this house or me, it goes straight to the authorities. You're threatening a corporate executive. Do you have any idea how many lawyers I have on speed dial?" I was bluffing about the lawyers. Most of them were for contract law, not criminal defense. But it worked. The pounding stopped. "Chloe said you were a stuck-up bitch," Victor muttered, though he sounded less certain now. "Just stay quiet, Emma. 7 days, that's all. If you make a scene, nobody wins." I watched through the peephole as he stomped back to the black Suburban. He didn't leave, though. He parked at the curb right in front of my house. He was a sentry, a human gargoyle, making sure I didn't try to take the kids to a police station. I retreated to my kitchen, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I needed a plan. I couldn't call the police yet, not while he was sitting right there and Chloe was ready to call my boss with lies about my mental health. I needed evidence. I needed to prove she was the one who was unhinged. I called my boyfriend Eric in Australia. Despite the time difference, he answered on the second ring. I broke down, the words spilling out of me in a frantic mess. The cruise, the kids, the giant man in the Suburban, and the threat to my job. "Emma, listen to me," Eric said, his voice a calm anchor in my storm. "She's committing a crime, abandonment and extortion. But you need her to say it. You need her on tape, admitting that she's lying about your health to keep you quiet." "She won't talk to me, Eric. She's on a boat in the middle of the ocean," I sobbed. "Then call her business phone. Use a different number. Trap her," he suggested. "And in the meantime, look at those boys. They're scared. They're the only ones in this mess who are more vulnerable than you." He was right. I hung up and looked at the stairs. I had spent my life being the ugly duckling, the one my mom said was born ugly and would die ugly. I knew exactly what it felt like to be a child in a house where you weren't wanted. I wasn't going to let Liam and Noah feel that way. I went upstairs and knocked softly on the guest room door. "It's me, guys. He's gone. Do you want to order some pizza?" When they opened the door, the look of relief on their faces broke my heart. They weren't just Chloe's kids anymore. They were my boys. I spent the next few hours doing something I hadn't done in years. I played. We ordered a mountain of pepperoni pizza, and I actually sat on the floor and played video games with them. They were so polite, always saying please and thank you, which made me realize just how much they must have been overcompensating for their mother's chaos. But as I watched Liam play, I noticed something that made my blood boil. His socks had holes in them. His shirt was 2 sizes too small. I looked through the bags Chloe had packed for a week-long trip. It was all rags. Stained, small, and worn out. Chloe was wearing designer clothes and flying to see sugar daddies while her kids were wearing trash. The resentment I'd carried since high school, when she slept with my boyfriend just because she could, flared into a cold, hard purpose. I wasn't just going to survive this week, I was going to take everything from her. I waited until the boys fell asleep, their small heads resting on my expensive silk pillows. Then, I sat in the dark of my office, my phone in my hand, and I dialed Chloe's secret number. I didn't care if it cost $5 a minute to call a cruise ship. It rang 3 times. "What?" Chloe snapped, her voice sounding slurred, like she'd already had a few too many drinks at the Lido deck. "The boys are crying, Chloe," I said, my voice a perfect imitation of a broken woman. "I can't do this, I'm calling the police." "You do that, and you're finished, Emma," she hissed. "I already have the email drafted to your HR department. 1 click and everyone knows you're a bipolar freak who's off her meds. I don't care if it's true or not. By the time you prove it's a lie, you'll be out on the street." I leaned back, a grim smile forming on my face as I watched the recording app on my laptop capture every single word. "You don't deserve anything in this life." Chloe's voice crackled through the phone, sounding more like our mother than she ever had before. "You don't deserve the house, you don't deserve the job, and you certainly don't deserve to have a say in how I raise my kids." I stayed silent, letting her dig her own grave. I could hear the faint sound of steel drums and laughter in the background of her end. She was living it up on a sugar daddy's dime while I was in the trenches with the children she treated like disposable baggage. "I have the recording, Chloe?" I said softly, my voice no longer trembling. "I have you admitting that you're willing to lie to my employer to blackmail me. I have you admitting you abandoned your kids for a vacation." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, followed by a laugh that sounded more like a hiss. "You think a little recording is going to save you? Victor is still outside, Emma. And my mom? She's already told everyone in the family that you've had a mental break and kidnapped the boys." She hung up before I could respond. I sat in the dark for a long time, the glow of my computer screen the only light in the room. My family's capacity for evil shouldn't have surprised me. This was the same woman who had slept with my boyfriend in high school, just to prove she could. This was the same mother who told me I was the ugly duckling who would die alone. They didn't see me as a person, they saw me as a resource to be used or a threat to be neutralized. The next morning, the tension in the house was thick enough to choke on. I looked out the window and saw the black Suburban was still there. Victor was leaning against the hood, staring directly at my front door. He was a physical reminder that I was a prisoner in my own home. But then I looked at the boys. They were sitting at the kitchen island eating the cereal I'd poured for them. Liam was carefully making sure Noah didn't spill his milk. They were so incredibly polite, so well behaved, and it broke my heart, because I knew that kind of behavior in children usually comes from a place of fear. They were trying to be perfect so I wouldn't throw them out. "Auntie Emma?" Liam asked, his voice small. "Are we going to see our mom today?" I knelt down beside him. I couldn't tell him the truth, that his mother was currently dancing on a boat while a hired thug intimidated his aunt. "Not today, honey, but we're going to have a good day. I promise." I realized I couldn't wait for Chloe to come back. I needed to strike first. If I waited, she would have time to coordinate her lies with my mother. I called my supervisor at work before the office even opened. I didn't wait for him to hear a rumor. I told him everything, the estrangement, the abandonment, and the threats. I told him I was sending over a doctor's note and 5 years of medical records to prove my stability before anyone could claim otherwise. "Emma, you're one of our top performers," my boss said, his voice surprised. "We've had some strange calls this morning, but we didn't take them seriously." This explains a lot. My sister had already started. She had probably used the ship's Wi-Fi to send emails the moment she hung up on me. But for the first time in my life, I was 2 steps ahead of her. By noon, the police arrived at my house. I hadn't just called them for a wellness check. I had reported a trespasser and a kidnapping threat. As the patrol car pulled into the driveway, Victor didn't even try to run. He stood his ground, claiming he was family friends just looking out for the kids. The officers didn't buy it. They saw the look on the boys' faces when they saw Victor. They saw the recorded threats on my phone. As they handcuffed him and led him away, he turned to me and spat a phrase in Russian that I didn't need a translator to understand. But the victory was short-lived. As soon as the police car left, my phone rang. It was my mother. "You've done it now, Emma," she hissed, her voice trembling with a rage that made my skin crawl. "You've ruined everything. Your sister is coming home, and she isn't coming alone. You think you're so smart with your degrees and your big house. but you're still just the girl nobody wanted." The line went dead. I looked at my nephews. They were holding each other, trembling. I realized that this wasn't just about my job or my house anymore. This was a war for these boys' lives. My sister was flying back from her cruise, and she was coming for blood. The silence that followed my mother's hang-up was more deafening than her screaming. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, a room filled with expensive appliances and marble counters, that suddenly felt like a stage set for a tragedy. My mother had always treated me like an unwanted guest, even in my own life. Hearing her defend Chloe after she had abandoned her own children shouldn't have surprised me, but the venom in her voice was a reminder that I was still just the ugly duckling to her, someone born ugly who would die ugly. I looked at Liam and Noah. They were still huddled on the sofa, their eyes darting toward the door as if they expected my mother to burst through it at any moment. I realized that my mom didn't care about their safety. She only cared about protecting the golden child. To her, I was like an unwashed dog in the family home rather than a human being. "We're going to the mall," I announced, my voice sounding more confident than I felt. "The mall?" Liam asked, sounding confused. "But we don't have any money." "I have money, Liam," I said, "and you two need things." I had noticed earlier that they both had holes in their socks, and Liam's clothes were so small they looked like they were cutting off his circulation. My sister was a cheap, neglectful parent who wore designer clothes while her kids wore rags. I spent the afternoon buying them everything they had been denied: new wardrobes that actually fit, sturdy shoes, and even Nintendo Switches. At the mall, the boys finally started to come out of their shells. They ran around the stores, their eyes wide with disbelief as I told them they could pick out whatever they wanted. When I bought the Switches, they both broke down crying and hugged me. Liam looked at me through tears and asked why I was being so nice to them and why they deserved it. "You deserve to be happy just because you're you," I told him, my heart breaking for the version of me that never heard those words. But as we drove home, the reality of my situation settled back in. My sister was on her way back, likely fueled by drugs and the rage of being betrayed by the sister she thought she owned. I knew she wouldn't just come for the kids, she would come to destroy me. I called my boyfriend Eric again. He was the only person truly in my corner. "She's going to try to take them back by force, Emma," Eric warned. "She has nothing to lose now. You've already called CPS and got her enforcer arrested. She's going to be feral." He was right. My sister had always been unhinged, and my mom had spent a lifetime enabling her. I looked at the little boys sleeping in the back seat, clutching their new toys. I realized I didn't want to say goodbye to them. I didn't want to watch them walk back into my sister's toxic arms. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with images of the tough man my sister might bring next. I walked into the guest room and watched the boys sleep. They were so innocent, and they didn't deserve a mother who would use them as pawns in her sick games. I had a 6-figure job, a 4.0 GPA from a prestigious university, and a penthouse office. My sister was a college dropout who relied on sugar daddies. If this ended up in front of a judge, I was going to fight for these boys with everything I had. But before the courts could intervene, the front door hit the wall with a sound like a sandbag being slapped over and over. I ran to the hallway just as the door splintered open. It wasn't just Chloe. Standing beside her was a man who looked like a giant, 6'5", 300 pounds, with hands the size of my head, and standing right behind them, with those same cold, hateful eyes, was my mother. Before I could even speak, the giant man stepped forward. He didn't say a word. He just put his hand on my shoulder and shoved me down with all his might. The impact with the hardwood floor sent a jolt of white-hot pain through my shoulder, but the adrenaline was so thick I barely felt it. I scrambled back, my breath hitching as I looked up at the 3 people invading my sanctuary. My sister Chloe stood over me, looking refreshed from her cruise, her skin tan and her eyes sparkling with a malicious delight. Behind her, my mother looked down at me with the same cold disgust she'd had when she called my childhood birthday cake clumpy. "Look at you," Chloe sneered, stepping over me like I was a piece of trash left out for the curb. Always the victim, always trying to ruin things for people who actually have lives. "Get out of my house," I shouted, my voice cracking. I tried to stand, but the giant, the new, tough guy Chloe had clearly recruited to replace Victor, stepped forward, his shadow looming over me like a tombstone. "The kids, Chloe. Get the kids and let's go," my mother commanded. She didn't even look at me. To her, I wasn't a daughter being assaulted in her own home. I was just a hurdle in the way of her golden miracle. "They aren't going anywhere," I screamed. I managed to find my feet, clutching the edge of the hallway table. "I've already spoken to CPS. I've spoken to the police. You're on camera, Chloe, every single one of you." Chloe laughed, a sharp, jagged sound. "You think I care about your little cameras? This is Derek. Derek doesn't like it when people talk too much. And as for the police, my mom already told them you're having a manic episode. We're just here to rescue my children from a kidnapper. She started up the stairs, her designer heels clicking on the wood like a countdown. My heart stopped. I couldn't let her get to them. I knew what would happen if those boys went back to her. They'd be back in rags, back to being ignored, back to the fear. I lunged for her, grabbing the hem of her jacket. "You are not taking them!" Before I could pull her back, Derek swung his arm. It wasn't a punch, it was a casual backhanded blow that sent me spinning into the wall. I hit the plaster hard, the world tilting as my vision blurred. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard the guest room door splinter. I heard Noah scream, a high, thin sound that cut through me like a knife. "Let me go! I want Auntie Emma." Liam's voice was a roar of defiance, but he was only 8. I tried to crawl toward the stairs, my head spinning. My mother stepped in front of me, her sensible shoes inches from my face. "You brought this on yourself, Emma. You always had to be the smart one, the one with the important job. You thought you were better than us, but look at you now. You're just a girl on the floor." I looked up at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the sting of her rejection. I felt a cold, burning clarity. She wasn't a mother. She was a monster who fed on the misery of one child to nourish the ego of the other. "I am better than you," I whispered, blood trailing from my lip. "Because I actually love them. You're just using them to keep your perfect little world from falling apart." Her face twisted into a mask of pure rage, and for a second, I thought she was going to hit me herself. But then, Chloe appeared at the top of the stairs, dragging a sobbing Noah by the arm. Derek followed, carrying Liam over his shoulder like a sack of grain. Liam was kicking, his small fists thudding against Derek's back, but the giant didn't even flinch. "We're done here," Chloe said, looking down at me with a triumphant grin. "Have fun explaining the broken door to your fancy neighbors, Emma. Oh, and don't bother calling the cops. By the time they show up, we'll be long gone, and the boys will tell them exactly what I told them to say." They marched out the front door, leaving it wide open. The cold night air rushed in, but it couldn't touch the ice in my veins. I laid there for a moment, listening to the roar of their engine as they sped away. I was alone. The house was a wreck. My body was broken. But as I pulled myself up, leaning against the wall for support, I realized they had made one fatal mistake. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was the same unwashed dog they had kicked around for 26 years. They forgot that I didn't get to my position in the corporate world by playing nice. I got there by being the smartest, most calculated person in the room. And while they were busy celebrating their victory, I was already thinking 3 moves ahead. I wiped the blood from my mouth and reached for my phone, which had fallen under the hallway table. I didn't call the police, not yet. I called Marcus, my boyfriend's contact in the city's legal elite. "Marcus," I said, my voice cold and hard as granite. "I need a private investigator, a top-tier family law attorney, and a forensic digital expert. And I need them at my house in 20 minutes. The war wasn't over. It had just moved from my hallway to the one place Chloe and my mother couldn't survive, the light of the truth. I sat on my kitchen floor, my back against the cold marble of the island, listening to the dial tone of my own life. My shoulder was throbbing, and I could feel a bruise blooming across my cheekbone where Derek had struck me. But I didn't reach for ice. I reached for my laptop. I had spent years in the corporate world learning that people don't win wars with their fists. They win them with documentation. By the time Marcus arrived with the private investigator, a man named Elias who looked like he hadn't smiled since the 90s, I had already exported the cloud footage from my doorbell and hallway cameras. "They took them, Marcus," I said, my voice cracking as I stood up. "They broke down my door and they took the boys. My mother was with them. She watched him hit me." Marcus looked at the splintered wood of my front door, then at the blood on my lip. His jaw tightened. "This isn't just a custody dispute anymore, Emma. This is a home invasion and aggravated assault. They've handed us the rope to hang them with." Elias, the investigator, was already hunched over my laptop. "I've got the plate on the SUV," he grunted. "It's registered to a rental company under a fake name, but the GPS signature is pinging. They aren't going far. They think they've won, so they're probably heading back to your mother's house to celebrate. Because," Elias said, a grim smile finally touching his lips, "Chloe Miller has an outstanding warrant in 3 counties for check fraud and unpaid child support from a previous relationship no one told you about." I felt the air leave my lungs. My sister, the Golden Miracle, was a fugitive. And my mother, the woman who spent a lifetime telling me I was the ugly one, had been bankrolling a criminal. The tension in the room shifted. We weren't just defending me anymore, we were preparing an execution. But just as I was about to call the police with the GPS coordinates of the SUV, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. It was a photo. Liam and Noah were sitting at a kitchen table, my mother's kitchen table. They looked terrified. Noah was crying, and Liam was staring at the camera with a hollow, haunted look. Underneath the photo was a message from my mother. Drop the charges against Victor and sign the affidavit stating you had a mental breakdown. If you don't, we'll make sure the boys tell the judge you had touched them. Don't test me, Emma. You know who the family believes. I felt a surge of nausea so violent I had to grip the table. She was willing to destroy her own grandson's lives and my reputation with the most heinous lie imaginable, all to protect Chloe's freedom. Marcus, I whispered, showing him the screen. She's threatening to frame me for that. Marcus read the text, and for the first time, the professional mask slipped. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated fury on my behalf. She just committed witness tampering and extortion via electronic communication. Emma, don't reply. Let her think you're scared. Let her think you're crumbling. Why? I asked, my heart hammering. Because, Marcus said, picking up his coat, we aren't just calling the police now. We're calling the SWAT team. And I'm going to make sure the local news cameras are there to film your mother being let out in handcuffs. The war had just reached its breaking point. My mother thought she was the one pulling the strings, but she had just handed me the scissors to cut them all. I looked at the photo of Liam and Noah on my screen one more time. Their terror was palpable, a silent screen captured in pixels. My mother, the woman who had birthed me, who had supposedly nurtured me, was using those innocent boys as a human shield for her pride. She wasn't just defending Chloe anymore. She was trying to annihilate me. Emma, look at me, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a low, commanding frequency. She just handed us the ultimate weapon. In this state, threatening to fabricate a report of child abuse to interfere with a legal proceeding is a felony with a mandatory minimum. She didn't just step over the line. She jumped off a cliff. What do we do? I whispered. My hands were shaking so violently I had to sit on them. She has the kids. If she thinks the police are coming, she might. I don't know what she's capable of anymore. We don't give her a chance to think, Elias, the investigator, interjected. He was already on the phone with his contacts at the sheriff's department. We have the assault on video. We have the kidnapping. We have the extortion. The tactical team is already prepping. They don't play games with home invaders who use kids as leverage. The next hour was a blur of high-stakes coordination. I sat in the back of an unmarked black SUV with Marcus, trailing behind 3 patrol cars and a tactical unit. We were headed toward the affluent suburb where my mother lived, the house where I'd spent my childhood feeling like an unwashed dog while Chloe was treated like a princess. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother's obsession with appearances was about to be her undoing. She lived for the respect of her neighbors, for the image of the perfect family. As we pulled onto her street, the silence of the neighborhood was eerie. It was 11:30 p.m. The streetlights cast long, skeletal shadows across the manicured lawns. The tactical team moved with a terrifying, silent efficiency, surrounding the house before my mother or Chloe even knew they were there. Stay in the car, Emma, Marcus warned. No, I said, my voice cold and hard. I need to be there when they see that I'm not the one who's broken. I stepped out of the SUV just as the first flashbang detonated. Boom. The sound echoed through the quiet cul-de-sac like a cannon blast. Then came the shouting. Police! Search warrant! Get on the ground! I watched from the sidewalk as the front door, the same door I used to walk through with my head down, was kicked off its hinges. Blue and red lights began to dance across the white siding of the house, turning the Golden Miracles Sanctuary into a crime scene. Moments later, the giant, Derek, was let out in zip ties. He wasn't the tough guy anymore. He was staggering, his face pressed into the dirt as they searched him. Then came Chloe. She was screaming, her silk robe fluttering in the wind, her tan skin looking sallow under the harsh police searchlights. You did this, she shrieked, spotting me standing by the cruiser. You're a monster, Emma. You're ruining our family. You ruined it the second you stepped on that boat, Chloe, I yelled back, the words tearing out of my throat. Finally, my mother was let out. She wasn't screaming, she was silent, her head held high even as the handcuffs clicked behind her back. When our eyes met, she didn't look remorseful. She looked at me with a pure, concentrated hatred that confirmed everything I had ever felt. She didn't see a daughter, she saw a mistake she had failed to erase. But my heart didn't fully beat again until I saw the 2 small figures huddled behind a female officer. Liam! Noah! I ran toward them, ignoring the officer's hand trying to hold me back. They saw me and broke into a sprint. They collided with me so hard I almost fell over, their small arms wrapping around my neck like life jackets. Noah was sobbing into my shoulder, and Liam was shaking, his face buried in my hair. I knew it, Auntie, Liam whispered, his voice cracking. I told Noah you'd come. I told him you were the one who was going to save us. I held them tight, the cold night air no longer mattering. I looked over their heads at my mother being shoved into the back of a police car. The golden child was in handcuffs. The enforcer was in the dirt, and the ugly duckling was the only one left standing. But as the adrenaline began to fade, a new fear took its place. This was just the beginning. I had the kids, but Chloe and my mother had a lifetime of experience in manipulation. They were already calling their high-priced lawyers. The war for my nephew's future had only just moved to a new battlefield, the courtroom. The boys were safe in the back of my car, wrapped in blankets that smelled like home, but the air around us was still thick with the acrid scent of the flashbangs. I watched through the window as the police began to process the scene. My mother's pristine suburban lawn was littered with tactical gear and the heavy boots of officers who didn't care about her prize-winning hydrangeas. Emma, we need to go, Marcus said, his hand firm on my shoulder. The police need to finish here, and you need to get these boys to a safe location. My firm has a secured guest house. Your mother and Chloe will be out on bail faster than you think. They have connections, and your mother's spotless reputation is a powerful shield. Bail? I felt a surge of cold fury. They broke into my home. They assaulted me. They kidnapped children. How is bail even an option? It's the system, Emma, Marcus sighed. But we're going to use this time to bury them. We arrived at the secured guest house at 2 a.m. Liam and Noah fell into a deep, exhausted sleep, but I stayed up. I sat at the kitchen table with Marcus and Elias, surrounded by folders, laptops, and the recording of the extortion threat. We need to look at the money, Elias said, tapping a pen against his chin. Your mother isn't just a bystander, she's the bank. Chloe hasn't held a job in 3 years, yet she's on a VVIP cruise. That's your mother's money. And Derek? He's on a retainer. I did a quick, deep dive. He's been on your mother's payroll as a property manager for 2 years. Property manager? I scoffed. He's a leg breaker. Exactly, Elias replied. If we can prove your mother knowingly hired a man with a violent criminal record to intimidate you, we move from family dispute to conspiracy to commit assault. We aren't just going after Chloe's custody, we're going after your mother's freedom. But then, the first blow of the legal counterattack landed. My phone chimed with an alert. My mother's attorney, a shark named Sterling who had kept half the city's corrupt politicians out of jail, had already released a statement to the local press. A tragic misunderstanding involving a high-conflict family dynamic. My client, a respected pillar of the community, was simply attempting to recover her grandchildren from a relative experiencing a documented mental health crisis. We have evidence of the petitioner's instability and look forward to the truth coming to light. They're doing it, I whispered, the room spinning. They're using the manic episode lie. They're going to make me look like the kidnapper. Let them, Marcus said, his eyes glowing with a predatory light, because while they're talking to the press, we're talking to the bank. Elias, did you find the offshore accounts? Better, Elias grinned. I found the insurance policies. My heart skipped a beat. What insurance policies? Elias turned his laptop toward me. Your mother took out a massive life insurance policy on Liam and Noah 6 months ago, but here's the kicker. She listed Chloe as the primary beneficiary, but herself as the irrevocable trustee. If anything happened to those boys while they were in Chloe's neglectful care, your mother would control a payout of nearly $2 million. The room went cold. I looked at the digital documents, the numbers blurring before my eyes. My mother didn't love those boys. She didn't even love Chloe. She saw them all as a long-term investment. Chloe was the incompetent puppet, and the boys were the collateral. She was waiting for Chloe to mess up, I realized, my voice trembling. She knew Chloe was neglectful. She was waiting for an accident to happen so she could collect the jackpot. That's why she encouraged the cruise. That's why she dropped them at my house. She wanted a paper trail of abandonment to prove Chloe's negligence later. But you interfered, Marcus added. By calling CPS and the police, you sped up the timeline. You threatened her payout. That's why she sent Derek. It wasn't about the kid's safety. It was about protecting her $2 million plan. I looked toward the guest room where the boys were sleeping. They were pawns in a game played by a woman who had spent my childhood telling me I was worthless. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting for custody. I was fighting for their lives. But before we could celebrate the discovery, a loud thud echoed from the front porch. I froze. Elias, check the cameras, Marcus barked. Elias looked at his tablet, his face going pale. There's a car in the driveway. It's not the police. I looked at the screen. It was a sleek, silver Mercedes. A woman stepped out. her hair perfectly coiffed, her suit worth more than my car. It was my mother. She wasn't in jail. She was out on bail, and she had found us in less than 4 hours. She walked up to the camera, leaned in, and smiled. It was that same chillingly sweet smile she used when she was about to say something that would destroy my soul. "Emma, dear," her voice came through the intercom, sounding horribly calm. "I hope the boys are tucked in. I've just filed an emergency motion with the judge. Since you've kidnapped them and have a history of mental instability, the court has granted me temporary emergency custody. You have 10 minutes to bring them out, or the police will be here to arrest you for child abduction." The world tilted. She had flipped the script. In the eyes of the law, for the next 10 minutes, I was the criminal. The sound of my mother's voice through the intercom was like a needle pressing against my jugular. I looked at the monitor. She was standing there, calm and poised, as if she were picking up a dry cleaning order instead of trying to snatch 2 traumatized children in the middle of the night. "Marcus, tell me she's lying," I whispered, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Tell me a judge didn't actually give her those boys after everything that happened tonight." Marcus was already on his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. His face was a mask of grim concentration. "Sterling is fast, Emma. He's one of those lawyers who keeps a judge on speed dial for emergencies. If he presented a one-sided narrative, claiming you're having a breakdown and that the police overreacted to a family squabble, it's possible. In this county, the status quo is always return to the legal guardian or next of kin. I am the next of kin who isn't a criminal," I yelled, the frustration boiling over. "10 minutes, Emma!" My mother's voice chirped again, followed by a sharp, rhythmic tapping on the glass of the door. Tap, tap, tap. It was the same sound she used to make on my bedroom door when I was a child to let me know I was in trouble. Elias grabbed his tablet. I'm looking at the court's digital portal. There it is, an emergency ex parte order signed 20 minutes ago. It grants temporary custody to Sarah Miller pending a hearing on Monday morning. "Emma, if you don't open that door, she's gonna call the cops. And this time, they'll be coming for you." I looked toward the bedroom where Liam and Noah were sleeping. They had finally found peace, and now I was supposed to hand them back to the Viper? I looked at the bruise on my arm, the splintered wood of my own front door, and the insurance policies on the table. "No," I said, a cold, hard resolve settling into my bones. "I'm not opening it." "Emma, you'll go to jail for kidnapping," Marcus warned. "Then let them arrest me," I snapped. "But while they're processing me, I want you to file a counter motion. I want the insurance policies, the cruise manifest, the recording of the extortion, and the video of the assault attached to every single page. If a judge wants to put me in a cell for protecting these kids from a woman who priced their lives at $2 million, then let the press see that too." I walked to the door. I didn't open it. I leaned my forehead against the wood. "Go away, Mom. I know about the insurance. I know about the $2 million you're waiting to collect on these boys. I know everything." The tapping stopped. For a moment, there was a heavy, suffocating silence. Then, her voice changed. The sweet grandmother persona vanished, replaced by the low, guttural snarl of the woman who had spent 26 years trying to break me. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think those little papers mean anything? I have friends in the city you haven't even met yet. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be lucky if they let you work as a janitor in that fancy building of yours. Give me the boys, or I will bury you so deep the light won't find you for a decade." "I'm already buried, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You buried me a long time ago. I just learned how to breathe underground." I turned away from the door and looked at Elias. "Can you get the local news here?" Elias grinned. "I already called them. There's a van 2 blocks away. They love a respected pillar of society scandal." "Good," I said. "Marcus, call the police. Tell them I am refusing to comply with a court order obtained through fraud, and that I am requesting an immediate emergency stay based on evidence of a plot to harm the children for insurance money." The next 10 minutes felt like an eternity. Outside, I heard my mother screaming into her phone, likely berating her lawyer. Then, the sirens started. Faint at first, then growing into a deafening roar. The police didn't come with flashbangs this time. They came with a supervisor and a look of deep annoyance. I saw the flashing lights through the windows and the silhouette of my mother pointing frantically at the house, playing the distraught grandmother once again. I didn't wait for them to knock. I walked out onto the porch, my hands held out in front of me, but I was holding my phone, which was live streaming to the Foundation's social media page and the local news affiliate. "Officer," I said, addressing the sergeant who stepped forward, "I am Emma Miller. I am refusing to hand over these children because I have evidence that my mother, Sarah Miller, has taken out a $2 million life insurance policy on them and has orchestrated their abandonment to facilitate a payout. Here's the documentation." I handed handed over a folder Marcus had prepared. My mother tried to lunge for it, but an officer held her back. "She's lying," my mother shrieked. "She's had a breakdown. Look at her. She's disheveled. She's violent." The sergeant looked at the folder, then at the distraught woman screaming on the lawn, and then at the camera crew that had just pulled up behind the patrol cars. He sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from a man who knows his night just got a lot longer. "Ma'am," he said to my mother, "if this document is real, your emergency order is based on a fraudulent petition. We're going to need everyone to come down to the station. Now." I looked at my mother as the officers moved to escort her. For the first time, I saw it, the flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. The golden miracle was in a cell, and now the queen was being dragged into the mud. But as I turned to go back inside to wake the boys, a black sedan pulled up behind the news van. A man in a sharp suit stepped out. He didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like the kind of man who handled problems that lawyers couldn't touch. He caught my eye and tapped his watch. The war wasn't just in the courtroom anymore. My mother had one last tough guy, and this one didn't look like he used his fists. He looked like he used a silencer. The flashing blue and red lights reflected off the polished chrome of the black sedan that had just arrived. The man who stepped out didn't look like the street thugs Chloe usually associated with. He didn't have Derek's brute size or Victor's gravelly voice. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my first car, and his movements were precise, surgical, and utterly devoid of emotion. My mother, who had been struggling against the officer's grip, suddenly went still when she saw him. A flicker of something, not hope, but a grim recognition, crossed her face. "Marcus?" I whispered, stepping closer to my attorney. "Who is that? He doesn't look like a lawyer." Marcus squinted, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the newcomer. "That's Julian Vane. He's not a lawyer. He's a consultant. In this city, that's code for a man who makes scandals disappear before they hit the morning edition. If your mother has him on speed dial, she's deeper into the pockets of the local elite than we thought." Vane didn't even look at the police. He walked straight toward me, ignoring the yellow tape and the officer's commands to stay back. He stopped exactly 6 feet away, his eyes scanning me like I was a line of code he needed to rewrite. "Miss Miller," he said, his voice a smooth, terrifying baritone. "You've made quite a mess tonight. Your mother is a very respected woman. Respected women don't go to jail. It's bad for the local economy." "She's a fraud," I snapped, holding my ground even as my pulse thundered in my ears. "She's an accessory to assault, and she's planning to profit off the deaths of her own grandsons. I don't care who she knows." Vane smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The insurance policies are unfortunate. A clerical error, I'm sure. But here's the reality. The live stream you're currently broadcasting, it's going to experience a technical glitch in about 30 seconds. And the files on your laptop, they're being remotely encrypted as we speak." I felt a jolt of panic. I looked back through the window at Elias, who was frantically typing on his keyboard. He looked up, his face pale, and gave me a sharp shake of his head. "He's in," Elias mouthed through the glass. "He's wiping the cloud. You think you can just delete the truth?" I hissed at Vane. "I don't delete it, Emma. I just make it inadmissible." Vane replied, "Now, here is the offer. You hand over the boys. You sign a statement saying the insurance documents were a misunderstanding. In return, your mother will pay off your mortgage and will ensure your career remains intact. If you refuse, by 8 a.m., the police will find narcotics in this guest house, and you will be the one in a jumpsuit." This was it, the ultimate pressure point. My mother wasn't just using brute force anymore. She was using the very system I had spent my life trying to succeed in. They were going to use my success as the weapon to destroy me. But Vane made one mistake. He assumed I was like my mother, that I cared more about my image and my house than I did about the two souls sleeping in the next room. "You're too late," I said, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. Vane paused. "Pardon? The live stream isn't the only place those files went," I said. "Before you arrived, I sent a BCC'd email to the board of directors at my firm, the district attorney's personal secretary, and 3 major national news networks. My boyfriend Eric has a mirror drive in Australia. You can't reach him. You can't encrypt a server 10,000 miles away." Vane's composure didn't break, but I saw the slight tightening of his jaw. He hadn't expected the corporate drone to have a global contingency plan. "The police are already here, Julian," Marcus added, stepping forward, "and the sergeant over there has already seen the hard copies. You're not fixing this one. You're just becoming an accomplice to witness tampering." Vane looked over at the sergeant, who was now walking toward us with a look of grim determination. The news cameras were still rolling. Elias had managed to pivot to a local broadcast feed that Vane couldn't jam. Vane stepped back, smoothing his jacket. "A bold move, Miss Miller. But remember Remember, wars aren't won in a single night. They're won by the person who can afford to stay in the light the longest. He turned and walked back to his sedan. Leaving my mother standing there, realized her fixer was retreating. The sergeant reached us. Ms. Miller, we've verified the insurance documents with the carrier's 24-hour fraud line. Your mother and sister are being processed for felony, conspiracy, and child endangerment. The emergency order is officially stayed. The boys stay with you. I watched as my mother was finally shoved into the back of the transport van. She looked through the window at me, her face contorted in a silent scream of rage. The golden miracle was gone. The queen was toppled, but as I walked back into the house and sat on the floor, the adrenaline finally crashed. I began to shake uncontrollably. I had won the battle, but Marcus's words echoed in my head. The custody battle is going to be a nightmare. Chloe wasn't just going to sit in a cell. She was a mother, and the law favored mothers, no matter how rotten they were. And now, I had a new enemy. A man in a charcoal suit who didn't like to lose. I looked at the boys who had woken up from the noise. Noah was holding his plush doggy, looking at me with big, tearful eyes. Are they gone, Auntie? He asked. They're gone, Noah, I said, pulling them both into a hug. And I promise you, they are never coming back. I meant it. But as I held them, I saw a new notification on my phone. It was an email from my HR department. Subject: urgent inquiry regarding professional conduct and legal allegations. The shadow fixer had already started his work. The glow of the smartphone screen felt like a laser burning into my retinas. Urgent inquiry regarding professional conduct. I had spent 5 years sacrificing my sleep, my relationships, and my health to climb the ladder at this firm. I was the first one in and the last one out. I was the reliable one. The same trait that made me a target for my family was the one that made me a titan in the boardroom. And now, with one phone call from a man in a charcoal suit, it was all being called into question. Emma, what is it? Marcus asked, noticing the way the color had drained from my face. Julian Vane, I whispered, sliding the phone across the table. He didn't just threaten my career. He already pulled the trigger. My HR department wants an emergency meeting at 8 a.m. They've received concerning documentation regarding my involvement in a criminal kidnapping and my unstable mental history. Marcus cursed under his breath. He's using the narrative your mother built. He's flooding their inbox with the fake medical history and the police report from the emergency order. Even if it's all lies, the corporate world hates noise. They'll terminate you just to keep the firm's name out of the headlines. I looked at Liam and Noah. They were finally drifting back to sleep on the sofa, exhausted by the trauma of the night. If I lost my job, I lost my leverage. I lost the ability to pay for Marcus, for Elias, and for the private security I now desperately needed. My mother knew exactly where to strike. She wanted to strip me of my resources until I was back to being that unwashed dog she could kick around. I'm not going to that meeting, I said, my voice suddenly cold. Emma, if you don't show up, they'll take it as a confession, Marcus warned. I'm not going to the meeting to defend myself, I corrected him. I'm going there to go on the offensive. Elias, I need you to find every connection between Julian Vane and the senior partners at my firm. There's a reason they're moving this fast. Someone on the board is doing Vane a favor. Elias cracked his knuckles. Vane doesn't work in a vacuum. He trades in favors. I'll bet my license he's got dirt on your managing director. I spent the rest of the night in a state of hyper-focused rage. While my mother sat in a processing cell and Chloe screamed at a public defender, I prepared a presentation that had nothing to do with my job performance. I gathered the evidence of the insurance fraud, the photos of the kids in rags, and the recording of the fixer threatening me on my own lawn. At 7:45 a.m., I stood in front of the glass-walled skyscraper where I worked. I was exhausted, my shoulder ached, and the bruise on my face was a vivid purple green. But I had never felt more powerful. I wasn't the ugly duckling today. I was a whistleblower. I walked into the conference room. My boss, Mr. Sterling, no relation to my mother's lawyer, was sitting there with 2 members of the legal team. They looked uncomfortable, refusing to meet my eyes. Emma, Mr. Sterling began, his voice heavy with feigned regret. We've received some very disturbing allegations. Given the nature of our clients, we cannot have a senior associate involved in John. Well, kidnapping and child endangerment. I agree, I said, sitting down and sliding a flash drive across the table. Which is why I'm here to discuss why this firm is taking orders from a known criminal fixer like Julian Vane to suppress a report of multi-million-dollar insurance fraud. The room went silent. Mr. Sterling's eyes flickered toward the flash drive. I have documentation, I continued, my voice steady and sharp. not only of the crimes committed by my family, but of the digital footprint Julian Vane left when he attempted to wipe my servers last night. I also have a list of the donations Vane has made to your personal charity, Mr. Sterling. If I am terminated today, this entire file goes to the SEC and the Bar Association before I even hit the lobby. I watched as the blood drained from my boss's face. He wasn't a golden child like Chloe, but he was just as susceptible to the fear of being exposed. He realized in that moment that I wasn't a victim he could quietly sweep under the rug. I was a liability he couldn't afford to ignite. "Emma, let's not be hasty," Sterling stammered. "We were just following up on an anonymous tip." "The tip came from a woman currently in a jail cell for kidnapping," I said, standing up. "I'm taking a 2-week paid leave of absence to handle my family's legal affairs. When I return, I expect my promotion to junior partner to be on the table. If not, we can discuss this in a courtroom. And I've already proven I'm very good at winning those." I walked out of the office without looking back. As the elevator doors closed, I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. I had saved my career, but more importantly, I had severed the last string Julian Vane had to pull. But as I reached my car, Elias called. "Emma, we've got a problem. Chloe's bail was just posted, and it wasn't your mother who paid it." "Then who was it?" I asked, my heart sinking. "The boy's biological father," Elias said. "The man who hasn't seen them in 5 years. He's back. He's got a high-powered legal team, and he's claiming that both you and Chloe are unfit. He's going for full custody, Emma, and he's using your mother's money to do it." The war hadn't ended. It had just mutated. My mother was playing her final card. If she couldn't have the boys, she would make sure I didn't have them either. She was handing them to a stranger just to spite me. I stood in the parking lot of my office building, the glass towers reflecting a world that felt like it was shifting beneath my feet. My mother was behind bars. Julian Vane was momentarily neutralized, and I had just stared down my boss. I should have been victorious. But the name Elias just dropped. James Vance felt like a cold hand reaching out from a grave I thought was sealed shut 5 years ago. "James?" I whispered into the phone, my voice flat with disbelief. "He hasn't sent a single birthday card, Elias. He didn't even show up to the child support hearings. Chloe used to brag about how he ran for the hills the moment Noah was born." "Why now?" "Because your mother found him," Elias replied. I could hear the tapping of his keyboard in the background. "My source says James was tracked down in a gambling den in Vegas 3 days ago. Someone, likely your mother's lawyer, Sterling, paid off his mounting debts and put him on a private jet. He's not here for the boys, Emma. He's here for the payout. Your mother promised him a cut of the insurance money if he wins custody and hands the boys back to her supervision once the heat dies down." I felt a surge of nausea. My mother was willing to hand her grandsons to a deadbeat gambler just to ensure I didn't win. To her, those boys weren't children. They were chips in a high-stakes poker game. "Where is he now?" I asked. "He's at the courthouse." Marcus's voice broke in on the three-way call. "He's filed an emergency petition to revoke your temporary guardianship. He's claiming you're a vengeful relative who is alienating the children from their natural parents. And Emma, he's brought a character witness with him." "Who?" "Your mother's sister, Aunt Linda, the one who always said you were difficult as a child." I squeezed the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The family was circling the wagons. They didn't care about the truth. They cared about the hierarchy. And in their world, I was at the bottom. I drove to the courthouse, my mind racing. When I arrived, the hallway was a sea of suits and whispers. I saw James before he saw me. He looked polished. Clearly my mother had bought him a new suit to hide the years of hard living. But his eyes were restless, darting around the room like a man looking for the nearest exit. Beside him stood Aunt Linda, looking prim and judgmental. When she saw me, she didn't offer a hug or a kind word. She just adjusted her pearls and looked at my bruised face with a sneer. "Look at you, Emma," she said, her voice loud enough for the passing bailiffs to hear. "Always in the middle of a fight. Always so aggressive. It's no wonder the boys are terrified." "They aren't terrified of me, Linda," I said, stepping into her space. "They're terrified of being handed back to a woman who left them to go on a cruise, and a man who couldn't remember their middle names if his life depended on it." "The court doesn't care about your feelings, Emma," James smirked, leaning against the mahogany door of the courtroom. "I'm the father. Biology trumps a bitter aunt every time. Thanks for the suit, by the way. Your mom mentioned you'd be the one paying for my legal fees once I sue you for emotional distress." I felt the familiar sting of being the unwashed dog, the one the family felt entitled to kick. But as I looked at James, I saw the weakness. He wasn't a tough guy like Derek, or a fixer like Vane. He was a small man with a big appetite for things he couldn't afford. The doors opened, and we were called before Judge Holloway. She was was known for being a letter-of-the-law judge, no nonsense and deeply traditional. James's lawyer started the performance. He spoke about the sanctity of the paternal bond and painted me as a career-obsessed woman who had kidnapped the children during a family dispute. He showed the judge a photo of my bruised face, not as evidence of my assault, but as evidence that I lived a violent and unstable lifestyle. Your Honor, James said, putting on a display of fake emotion that made my skin crawl. I made mistakes in the past. I was young, but seeing my boys in the hands of someone so volatile, it woke me up. I just want to be a father again. Judge Holloway looked at me, her expression unreadable. Ms. Miller, what do you have to say? The law generally favors a biological parent unless there is overwhelming evidence of I stood up. I didn't look at the judge. I looked at James. Your Honor, I began, my voice clear and projecting to the back of the room. I agree that biology is powerful, but biology doesn't pay for school lunches. Biology doesn't sit up all night when a 5-year-old is having nightmares about a man named Derek breaking down a door. And biology certainly doesn't explain why Mr. Vance's bank account was credited with $50,000 from my mother's estate account the day he arrived in this city. James's lawyer jumped up. Objection, relevance, and lack of foundation. I have the foundation, I said, nodding to Marcus. Marcus handed the judge a stack of papers. These are the wire transfer records Elias intercepted this morning, Your Honor. They show a direct link between the grandmother's defense fund and the biological father's sudden awakening to his parental duties. This isn't a reunion, it's a transaction. The judge's eyes narrowed as she scanned the documents. The silence in the room was absolute. James began to sweat, his eyes darting toward Aunt Linda, who suddenly seemed very interested in her shoes. Furthermore, I continued, if Mr. Vance is so dedicated to his children, perhaps he can explain to the court why he hasn't noticed that his youngest son, Noah, is currently wearing a medical bracelet for a peanut allergy. An allergy James claimed didn't exist in his deposition. I had baited the hook. In his written statement, James had claimed he was deeply involved in their medical care. I knew that, James stammered. I was just testing the boy's resilience. The judge looked at him with a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. Testing his resilience with an allergen, Mr. Vance? Or simply lying about your involvement? She slammed her gavel down. Temporary custody remains with Miss Emma Miller. Mr. Vance, you are ordered to remain in the jurisdiction for a full evidentiary hearing. And if I find out one more cent has moved from the grandmother's account to yours, you won't be going to a hotel. You'll be joining her in the county jail. As we walked out of the courtroom, James didn't look like a father. He looked like a man who had just lost a bet. He turned to me, his face twisted in a snarl. You think you've won, Emma? This is just one judge. Your mom has more money than you have breath. She'll find someone else. She'll never let you have them. Let her try, I said, leaning in so only he could hear. Because I'm not just the girl nobody wanted anymore. I'm the woman who owns the bank, and I'm just getting started. But as I watched him walk away, I saw Julian Vane standing at the end of the hallway, leaning against a marble pillar. He wasn't looking at James. He was looking at me, and he was clapping, slowly, mockingly. The shadow was back. And this time, he wasn't going after my job or the kids. He was going after the only thing I had left, my freedom. The slow, rhythmic sound of Julian Vane's clapping echoed off the marble walls of the courthouse, a chilling percussion that drowned out the chatter of the lawyers around us. He stepped out from the shadow of the pillar, his charcoal suit looking like armor in the harsh fluorescent light. James Vance had already scurried away, a defeated dog with his tail between his legs, but Vane didn't look like a man who had just lost emotion. He looked like a man who had just finished setting the stage for a finale. Bravo, Emma, Vane said, his voice a smooth, terrifying silk, a very touching performance. The bit about the peanut allergy? Inspired. You really have a talent for the dramatic. It wasn't a performance, Julian, I said, my voice cold. It was the truth, something I know you have a hard time recognizing. Vane stepped closer, so close I could smell the expensive sandalwood of his cologne. The truth is a malleable thing. You've spent the last 48 hours trying to play the hero, but heroes are so easy to topple. They have so many rules they have to follow. I don't have any rules, Emma, and neither does your mother. She's in a cell, I reminded him. And you're next if you keep threatening me. Vane chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound. Check your bank account, Emma, and then check the news. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd before I could respond. My heart hammered against my ribs as I fumbled for my phone. I logged into my personal banking app, expecting to see a zero balance or some kind of hack. Instead, I saw a deposit, a massive, terrifying deposit. $250,000 had been wired into my account 10 minutes ago. The source? a shell company linked to a known offshore gambling syndicate, the same one James Vance owed money to. Marcus, I choked out, showing him the screen. Look at this. Marcus turned pale. It's a setup. They're making it look like you're the one who paid James to throw the case. They're framing you for bribing a witness and money laundering. Before I could even process the horror of it, my phone buzzed with a news alert from the local affiliate. Breaking: Senior Corporate Associate Emma Miller under investigation for judicial bribery. Sources say Miller used offshore funds to pay off biological father in high-profile custody battle. They're not just going after your job anymore, Marcus said, his voice urgent. They're going after your life. If the DA sees this, they'll have a warrant out for your arrest by lunch. I didn't do this, I screamed, the walls of the courthouse suddenly feeling like they were closing in on me. Vane did this. He told me he was going to make the truth inadmissible. We have to move, Marcus said, grabbing my arm. We need to get to the boys and get you to a safe house before the police show up at the guest house. If you're arrested now, the boys go straight to the state, or worse, back to your mother's sister, Linda. We ran for the exit, my heels clicking frantically on the stone floor. As we burst through the glass doors, the sunlight felt like a spotlight on my back. I felt like the unwashed dog again, being hunted by the people who were supposed to protect me. We made it to the car, and I drove like a woman possessed. My mind was a whirlwind of panic and calculation. Julian Vane had turned my own weapons against me. He had used the digital world, the place where I felt most comfortable, to create a digital cage. When we reached the guest house, Elias was already loading his gear into his trunk. He looked at me with a grim expression. They're 10 minutes out, Emma. I've been monitoring the police scanners. They have an anonymous tip about illicit substances and the cash in your account. Vane is thorough. Where are the boys? I asked, breathless. In the car. We're moving them to a secure location in the hills, Elias said. But Emma, you can't come with us. If you're caught with them while there's a warrant out, it's a kidnapping charge on top of the bribery. You have to go to the DA yourself. You have to surrender before they come for you. Surrender? I felt the bile rise in my throat. If I surrender, I'm giving them exactly what they want. No, Marcus said, his eyes hard. You're going to the DA with the evidence Elias just found. Elias, tell her. Elias pulled up a screen on his tablet. Vane was sloppy with the wire transfer. He used a VPN, but he routed it through a server owned by your mother's holding company. He thought he masked it, but I found the digital fingerprint. It's a direct line, Emma. Your mother paid for the bribe that was supposed to look like it came from you. I looked at the screen. The Golden Miracle family was finally eating itself. My mother was so desperate to destroy me that she had left a trail that led straight back to her own bank account. I'm going to the DA, I said, my voice shaking but certain. But I'm not going alone. I'm going with every single piece of dirt we have on Julian Vane. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw the first police cruiser turning onto the street, its sirens wailing. I didn't stop. I headed straight for the heart of the city, for the one office where my mother's money couldn't reach. But as I drove, a black sedan, the same one Vane had been in, pulled up alongside me. The window rolled down, and for a split second, I saw Vane's face. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked at me and pointed 2 fingers at his eyes, then at mine. Then, he suddenly swerved his car into mine. The impact was deafening. Metal groaned and glass shattered as my car was pushed toward the concrete barrier of the highway. I fought the steering wheel, my heart in my throat as the world began to spin. The scream of twisting metal and the explosion of the side airbags filled the cabin as my car slammed into the concrete barrier. The world turned into a dizzying blur of gray and white. For a moment, there was a sickening silence, broken only by the hiss of steam from the crumpled hood. My head throbbed, and I could taste copper in my mouth. I looked to my left. Vane's sedan had slowed down, idling a few dozen yards ahead. He wasn't fleeing. He was watching. He wanted to make sure I stayed down. I fumbled for the door handle, but it was jammed. Panic surged through me. The unwashed dog instinct to curl up and hide, but then I thought of Liam and Noah. I thought of the plush doggy Noah was clutching, and the way Liam had looked at me in the courthouse, believing I was his shield. I kicked the door with everything I had, once. On the third hit, the latch snapped, and I tumbled onto the asphalt. Vane started to step out of his car, his expression as calm as a predator in a tall grass. But then, the sound of sirens, real, heavy-duty sirens, cut through the air. Elias hadn't just been monitoring the scanners, he had been tracking my GPS. 3 black SUVs with government plates screeched to a halt, boxing Vane in. Marcus stepped out of the lead vehicle, followed by a woman in a sharp navy suit. It was the district attorney herself. Julian Vane, the DA projected, her voice amplified by a megaphone. Step away from the vehicle. We have the digital footprint of the wire transfer, and we have the dash cam footage from Ms. Miller's car, which was streaming directly to a secure server. You're done." Vane froze. For the first time, I saw the mask of the shadow fixer crumble. He looked at me, then at the bruised, bloodied woman standing in the middle of a highway, and he realized he had underestimated the one thing money couldn't buy: the sheer, desperate willpower of a woman who had nothing left to lose. He was tackled to the ground before he could say a word. 3 hours later, I was sitting in a sterile interview room at the DA's office. My head was bandaged and my arm was in a sling, but I refused to leave. I watched through the two-way mirror as my mother was brought in for questioning. She looked smaller. Without the designer suits and the pillar of society lighting, she was just an old, bitter woman who had gambled her family for a payout. When the DA showed her the evidence of the insurance fraud and the conspiracy with Vane, she didn't cry. She didn't ask about the boys. She just looked at the camera and asked for her lawyer. "She's not going to win this time, Emma," Marcus said, handing me a cup of coffee. "The board of directors at your firm has also issued a formal apology. Mr. Sterling has been asked to resign following the discovery of his ties to Vane. You're not just keeping your job, you're the hero of the story, but the real victory happened the next morning. I was at the secure house when the doorbell rang. I tensed, my hand instinctively going to the alarm. But when I looked at the monitor, it wasn't a fixer or a thug. It was a social worker I had worked with during the foundation launch. "Emma," she said, smiling, "the emergency hearing is over. Given the criminal charges against the mother, the grandmother, and the evidence of the biological father's bribery, the court has granted you full permanent guardianship." I collapsed into a chair, the air finally returning to my lungs. It was over. The 8-week vacation that had turned into a war for survival had ended with the two people I loved most safe in my arms. But as I went to tell the boys, I saw a familiar face on the local news. Chloe. She had been extradited from the cruise port and was being led into a courtroom in a bright orange jumpsuit. The golden miracle was finally being seen by the world for what she really was, a woman who had abandoned her heart for a tan and a drink. She saw the camera and tried to hide her face, but it was too late. The image of the perfect sister was shattered forever. I walked into the boys' room. They were sitting on the floor, surrounded by the new toys I had bought them. Liam looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. "Are we going back, Auntie?" he asked, his voice trembling. I knelt down, pulling them both into a hug so tight I could feel their heartbeats. "No, Liam, you're home. You're finally home." The quiet that followed that declaration was the first real peace I had felt in 26 years. The court order was a physical weight in my hand, a shield made of paper and ink that finally kept the monsters at bay. But as I watched Liam and Noah rediscover their toys in the safety of my home, I knew that for a family like mine, justice wasn't just a verdict, it was an audit. The trial of Sarah and Chloe Miller became a local sensation. It wasn't just about a family squabble anymore. It was about the systematic dismantling of the golden miracle myth. My mother sat on the stand for 3 days. I watched her from the gallery, refusing to look away. For the first time, she couldn't control the narrative. The DA presented the insurance policies, the wire transfers to James Vance, and the testimony from Julian Vane, who had turned state's evidence to save his own skin. When the prosecutor asked my mother why she had increased the insurance coverage on her grandsons while encouraging their mother to abandon them, she didn't have a witty retort. She didn't have a clumpy cake she just looked old. She looked at the judge and said, "I was just trying to ensure their future. Chloe was never going to provide for them." She still didn't get it. She saw her daughter as a failure and her grandsons as a payday. And she saw me as the unwashed dog who had finally bitten the hand that refused to feed her. The judge didn't hold back. My mother was sentenced to 10 years for conspiracy, extortion, and insurance fraud. Because of her age, she'll likely spend the rest of her life in a facility that doesn't have silk sheets or a gardener. Chloe's fate was swifter. Between the child abandonment, the forgery of her identity for the cruise, and her involvement in the assault at my home, she was sentenced to 15 years. On the day she was led away, she screamed at me one last time, blaming me for stealing her life. I didn't say anything. I just watched the doors close behind her. James Vance fled back to Vegas before the ink on the custody order was dry. Without my mother's money, his paternal instinct vanished like smoke. But the real ending didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened 2 years later. I was sitting on my back deck, watching Liam and Noah play soccer in the yard. They were taller now, their faces filled out with healthy food and the kind of laughter that isn't tinged with fear. My promotion to junior partner had gone through, and the Figure It Out Foundation was now the leading advocate for children in abandonment cases. I heard the front door open, and Marcus walked out carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. He wasn't just my lawyer anymore. He had become the brother I never had. a constant anchor in our lives. The final audit came in today, Marcus said, sitting down beside me. The firm finished liquidating your mother's estate to pay for the boys' trust funds. Every cent she tried to hoard, every dollar she tried to use to destroy you, it's all theirs now. It's for their college, their first homes, their futures. I looked at the boys. Liam kicked the ball to Noah, who caught it and cheered. They were no longer wearing rags. They were no longer useful tools for someone else's greed. They were just children. I used to think I was the unlucky one, I said, taking a sip of the tea. The ugly duckling, the one who had to work 10 times harder just to be seen. And now? Marcus asked. And now I realized that being the one nobody wanted was my greatest strength, I replied. It meant they couldn't control me. It meant I had to build my own world. And in my world, there's no such thing as a golden child. There are only people who show up, people who love, and people who keep their promises. I stood up and walked down into the grass. The sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the lawn. Auntie Emma, watch this, Noah shouted, lining up a shot. He kicked the ball, and it soared through the air, hitting the net I'd installed last spring. He did a victory lap, his arms wide as if he were flying. I caught him in a hug as he ran past, his small heart beating strong against my chest. He smelled like grass and sunshine and safety. I looked up and saw Liam smiling at us, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. I knew it, Auntie, Liam had told me once, in the middle of the darkest night of our lives. I just knew you'd come back for us. I had come back for them, and in doing so, I had come back for the 16-year-old girl who once sat in a house with no furniture, wondering if she would ever be enough. I was enough. We were enough. I turned back to the house, the light in the windows glowing like a beacon. The unwashed dog had finally found her pack, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was the one who owned the shoes. I walked inside, the sound of the boys' laughter following me like a song, and I closed the door. Not to hide, but to stay.